and welcome to the Hallow Ian Horror Pod, the only podcast associated with the Hallow Ian Horror Hour, the television show that brings you everything Halloween and horror. As you've probably noticed, our show has different hosts just about every single time, but today I am not alone. I am joined by author Brianna Malake. How are you?
Good, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we are here for an interesting discussion today, but before we get into that, when does spooky season officially start and end according to you?
So honestly, August is when I start to think about all things horror and fall. But as far as ending, maybe February 1st, and then my brain's like, okay, Valentine's Day.
That's excellent.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, I used to go by the rule of August 4th, which was the release date for Halloween H2O, the return of Jamie Lee Curtis. And recently I've been happy to bump it up to July 5th, which is when retail stores really start putting out Halloween decorations. But all these
Mm.
summer starts seem to have Halloween as the end of spooky season, which I think we're going to lay out as historically inaccurate. Yeah, Halloween might be the
Yeah,
height of everything, but no matter when it starts, it runs at least until Christmas. And I say this because,
completely agree.
yeah, most people can name more ghosts associated with Christmas than with Halloween. And it's thanks to Dickens' Christmas Carol, the story of Ebenezer Scrooge being visited by four ghosts, five in the Muppet version, his partner George Marley, and the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future.
Yeah, and so one of the things we pulled to kind of talk about Dickens from Wikipedia is Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol during a period when the British were exploring and reevaluating past Christmas traditions. This included carols, but also newer customs at the time, such as cards and Christmas trees. And so he is noted saying he is influenced by the experiences of his own youth and by the Christmas stories of other authors, such as Washington Irving and Douglas Jerrold. Dickens had written three Christmas stories prior to the novella and was inspired following a visit to the Field Lane Ragged School, one of several establishments for London street children. And then there, the treatment of the poor and the ability of a selfish man to redeem himself by transforming into a more sympathetic character are the key themes of the story.
Yeah, and so I think it is important to call out at least one of his influences there. Washington Irving wrote not only the Sleepy Hollow story, which kind of created the Halloween
Mm.
tradition in America, but he also wrote The Night Before The Night Before Christmas, the original poem. Not a creature was stirring, and that really kind of established the idea of Saint Nicholas and what it would mean in American tradition. So he was really creating holiday propaganda, which influences our culture to this day. I know Coca-Cola gets a lot of credit for the image of Santa Claus, but the bringing presents down the chimney is really some of that Washington Irving stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So back to A Christmas Carol. Do you have a favorite adaptation? There are so many.
There are so many, and I'm gonna say that maybe it's because I'm a 90s baby, but I love the Muppet Christmas Carol.
Same.
It's funny, but it's serious, and Michael Caine is such a great Scrooge. And I know there's that like little clip or meme or whatever that goes around on social media every Christmas where it says that Caine approached the role with the same commitment as a serious drama, treating it like a Royal Shakespeare company play. And I think that you can sort of tell that, and it adds a special layer to the film, even though it's also with Muppets, right? So
Right.
it's like funny, but it's still that serious, still those little undertones of creepy ghosts and all of that. But also, I will just note, like, I love seeing it as a play put on by some community theater, right? Like, I don't have a favorite version of it as a play, but I always enjoy seeing the different takes that people come up with to make it their own between like set design and costumes. and all of that, making it sort of come to life in front of you.
Absolutely. That is a great answer. I also agree that I think the Muppet Christmas Carol is the apotheosis of Christmas carols. I think the representation of the ghosts is so cool and so iconic. It really kind of sets
Yeah.
everything up. But I will call out there's, I believe it's from 1972, an animated version that has probably the most terrifying Ghost of Christmas yet to come. And I
Mm.
absolutely love that one. It's a little bit harder to find, I think. I have a fondness because I'm an 80s kid, but I love the 90s too. But I have a fondness for the Mickey Mouse one, where
Mm,
yeah, where he is Cratchit and Scrooge McDuck is, of course, Ebenezer Scrooge. So
yes.
that is a
Yeah.
really good one. And then I think the one I gravitate towards most as an adult is Bill Murray's Scrooged. Just because I watched it a few times when I was younger, but I've probably worn out cassette tapes of A Muppet Christmas Carol and the Mickey Mouse one. So I
Yeah.
watch Scrooged more often now. Have you seen
Okay.
that one? Have you seen Scrooged?
I I'm trying to think about it, and I don't think I have.
Yeah. Bill
Because I
Murray
love Bill Murray.
Bill
So
Murray is Scrooge. He's a TV producer. Bobcat Goldthwait is in it. They're trying to make
Mm,
a like Santa violent move, like violent Santa movie, which probably influenced Violent Night, the David Harper series that is coming out. And yeah, it's just an interesting take. It was a massive flop when it came out, but I
my
think
never-ending list, right?
yeah, yep, exactly. And then also there is a audiobook version that is read by Tim Curry, and it is worth the 3 to 4 hours just to have Tim Curry play
Yes,
every
yes.
single character in the
Yeah.
story.
I honestly, yeah. Anything with Tim Curry, I will always sit through.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really good
Yeah.
version. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's all for
Yeah.
Christmas Carol, but we should jump into this
Cool.
other Christmas ghost story tradition.
Yeah. There's another one. The author is Montague Rhodes James or M.R. James.
Yeah, James was a scholar. He was a medieval scholar, and he was highly regarded as the provost for King College in Cambridge. But what we're remembering him for, and what he's probably most remembered for, are his ghost stories. He developed a style that is called the Jamesian style, and I'm going to click on something here so that I can have this pulled up in front of me. So the Jamesian classic usually followed a character setting in an English village, seaside town, or country estate, an ancient town in France, Denmark, or Sweden, or a venerable abbey or university. The protagonist was often a nondescript, rather naive gentleman scholar, often very reserved in nature. And the
Mm.
third part is that you would always have a discovery of an old book or an antiquarian object that somehow unlocks, calls down the wrath, or at least attracts unwelcome attention from a supernatural menace, usually from beyond the grave.
Mm.
Yeah, so James originally read these stories to friends and select students at Eton and Cambridge as Christmas Eve entertainments, and received wider attention when they were published in the collections of Ghost Stories of Antiquary, More Ghost Stories of the Antiquary, A Thin Ghost and Others, Warning to the Curious and Other Ghost Stories, and the hardback omnibus The Collected Ghost Stories of M.R. James. James published further 3 stories before his death in 1936. 7 previously published or unrefined stories appeared in the Fenstanton Witch and Others by M.R. James Ghost Story Scholars, which came out in 1999, all of which have been
Mm.
included in later collections.
Yeah, and he really redefined the ghost story for the new century because he really abandoned many of the formal cliches, like the Gothic cliches, at the time of his predecessors. And he's noted for his use of realism and dry humor to ground the stories and contrast with supernatural elements. And like you said, he's sort of the originator of the antiquarian ghost story. And he's also touted as the father of folk horror the way his plots and characters drew on his own scholarly interests in ancient folklore with the rural landscapes of Anglia. So his associations continued, well into the 21st century, like we are, due to the many adaptations of his stories, have made him, according to critic John Deere, the go-to folk horror writer, which is quite the title.
Yeah, and there was an excellent documentary that came out just a couple of years ago. Is it Dark Days and or I have to look this up real quick. Woodlands Dark and Days Bewitched. Okay, yes, there was a documentary that came out a few years ago called Woodlands Dark and Days Bewitched, which was kind of a 4 hour, one of these massive, like, cover all the folk horror, like the history of it, all the different films, interviews with amazing filmmakers. The one that comes to mind right off the top of my head is Robert Eggers, who, of course, is redefining what folk horror is on screen with his adaptations of
Mhm.
Nosferatu, his Macbeth interpretation with the Northman, and The Witch, and even I would say The Lighthouse is also folk horror. So, um,
Yeah.
I mean, I could make an argument for the Predator, the first movie, being a folk horror movie because we're talking about the demon in the woods and stuff. But it is
Mhm.
this is really the very Anglo-Saxon or British style of folk horror that you see in like The Wicker Man or so many like Eyes of Fire, Blood on Satan's
Yeah.
Claw. Like
Yeah.
this, it was all so heavily influenced by what M.R. James was doing and kind of the modern, more reserved, usually Christian person going to a more rural space where they adhered to older traditions. And
Mhm.
so I've mentioned some of these things, but in the 70s, the BBC began running a Christmas ghost story on television, um, adapting many of James' stories, including The Stalls of Barchester, A Warning Curious, Lost Hearts, and The Ash Tree, which I just revisited that story read by Christopher Lee last night in
Ooh.
his collection, and man, that is a very haunting story, and Christopher Lee is a fantastic narrator. So I highly
Mhm.
recommend checking that out. The original program in the 70s, or the original 70s run of the program, were all M.R. James stories except for one, which was another Dickens story, The Signalman.
Yes. And the series was then rebooted in 2005 and still continues with possibly the most recognizable of James's stories being adapted, The Whistle and I Will Come to You.
Yes, Whistle and I Will Come to
Yeah.
You is a fantastic story and film. That adaptation is really good. I highly recommend seeking that out. Are you familiar with James's work?
But only briefly. It's one of those things where I read it all years ago because I got really into ghost stories and I love folk horror.
Yep.
And I it's just one of those things I haven't read in it's got to be several years. But I think that might have to be a new tradition,
Yeah.
like just starting December reading ghost stories.
I I think
Only ghost stories.
that's the thesis of this episode is that winter December is for ghost stories. We have all things
Yes.
spooky from, if you want to start in July or August, definitely running through October. But as soon as Halloween passes, it is ghost story time. The veil is the thinnest on the night of All Hallows Eve, or Samhain, and after
Yeah.
that, the ghosts are just all here until the light shows up again. So that's really
Yes.
my big argument here. But also, speaking of tradition, um, this ghost story on television by BBC, like, is kind of like our Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in the States. Like it was something a lot of people watched for a very long time. I don't know how well the newer run is doing because many people don't
Yeah.
have cable TV, but I know it was a big deal, and it was followed by the like King's Christmas speech or Queen's Christmas speech, uh,
Yeah.
just as our Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade was usually followed by Reagan, Bush, or Clinton talking.
Yeah. I I'm curious, like with the change of how media is